Hello and welcome to this primary election debate for Republican candidates for U.S. Senate. This debate is sponsored by Clean Elections, the state's nonpartisan voter education agency. My name is Steve Goldstein and I'll be moderating this debate. Our format will be a little different today. We're hosting a 30-minute one-on-one since only one candidate has agreed to participate. Kari Lake has declined to join this discussion, and Elizabeth Ray did not respond in time to participate. Thanks to a partnership with the Clean Elections Commission and the Arizona Media Association, we're working to make sure all 2024 debates are the most accessible in Arizona history. That means this conversation will air on a long list of local TV stations, radio stations, and digital platforms, including support from local newspapers. It's a shared effort among hundreds of local media brands across Arizona. Transparency is critical here. That's why this conversation has been designed with input from a broad group of journalists in Arizona representing urban and rural communities. Thank you to voters across Arizona who've submitted questions too. We've reviewed all of them to make sure every voice is heard. However, no candidate has been given advance access to any of the questions. And with that, let's introduce the candidate. Mark Lamb, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Steve.
To begin, you have 2 minutes for an opening statement.
Well, thank you to Clean Elections and Steve for having me. And thank you in Arizona for tuning in tonight. I'm Sheriff Mark Lamb. First of all, what you need to know about me is I'm a husband of 30 years to my wife, Janelle, father of 5, grandfather to 3, 2 more on the way, which we're pretty happy about. And I'm a patriot. I'm also the sheriff of Pinal County, Arizona, the 3rd largest population-wise county in the state of Arizona. We are 600 employees, a budget of over $60 million. And I love this job. I've been in law enforcement for nearly 2 decades, and this was a hard decision to make. But when we talked about running for the U.S. Senate, we realized we need a proven conservative leader and fighter in Arizona. You know, there's an old Danish saying that says, whoever has the ability has the responsibility. When we look at the issues that are facing Arizona and this country, over and over, poll after poll shows that the issues that are at top of Americans' minds are the border, the economy, crime, and national security. You're not going to find a candidate more experienced in the border than I am. As a matter of fact, I'd be the most qualified senator in the Senate as it relates to the border. There's no other candidate that's managed a large budget like myself. And there's nobody that understands the rule of law in this race like I do. But here's the thing, this is a job interview, and I'm here tonight. One thing I go all over the state and business owners tell me, Sheriff, one of the hardest things we have is to get people to just show up. I'm here tonight, folks, because this is a job interview. You know, as a sheriff, I'd never hire anybody that didn't show up for a job interview. Nor would I hire anybody if they didn't have the right experience to do the job. Right now, I'm standing up here alone. I've stood alone on many issues across this state, including COVID, mask mandates, vaccine mandates. I've proven that I will stand alone for you in Washington, D.C. If those other folks aren't here tonight, you can't expect them to stand up for you in Washington, D.C. I hope to get your vote on July 30th. My name is Mark Lamb, and I'm running for the U.S. Senate, and Arizona needs a proven conservative leader and fighter.
All right, Mr. Lamb, thanks very much. We have a lot of topics to get to, but you alluded to something, so let's get to it right away. If Kari Lake were here, what's the first thing you'd ask her? What would you want to say to her?
Well, look, I'm not running against anybody. So I think what Arizona needs to understand is I'm running for the U.S. Senate. I think people in Arizona and America are tired of the politics that we've been seeing. This is a job interview, like I just said. What I should be able to convey to you is the experience, the knowledge that I bring to the table. I think the temperament that I've been able to gain over nearly 2 decades in law enforcement as a business owner, that experience of dealing with the border, budgeting, managing a large budget, balancing that budget, staying within that budget, the experience I bring fighting crime. These are all these top kitchen table items. And we need somebody that's going to know what to do when they get to Washington, D.C. We don't have any runway. The risks are too high. We have got to send the right person to the general election. I have no doubt, and poll after poll confirms that I'm the right person to send to the general election. So tonight I'm here, not against anybody. I'm here for you, the people of Arizona, to tell you why I think I'm the best candidate. And I think we're going to take this state back here in Arizona, and I'm your guy.
But one more question about this. Let's delve a little bit deeper. What do you think her absence says about how she feels about you and this race?
Oh, I don't know. I can't speak for her. I think my presence here should tell the people of Arizona, I want this job. That it's important enough for me to come here and show you the respect that you deserve here in Arizona to tell you why and answer the questions and be able to talk about the issues that we're facing, not just in Arizona, but as America. This is a really important time in our country. And we cannot afford to not give the people of Arizona the proper vetting process. And so I don't know what it says about me, but I think, like I said at the beginning, when you're interviewing for a job, if you don't show up, I don't know any company that's going to hire you if you don't show up. I'm here. I want your vote, and I think I'm here to earn your vote tonight. So thank you, people, for being logging on. Thank you for having me, and it's an honor to be in front of you tonight.
This is going to be a tough primary race. If you were to win the primary, why do you think you're the better person to beat probably Ruben Gallego in the general election?
Look, the main issue in this country is the border. We need a proven conservative fighter. Look, the border is an issue that it's not a talking point for me. This is not a photo op. This is what we do every day. Myself and my people, we go out. We are going into the deserts, finding people that are trying to come into this country illegally, those gotaways you hear about. We're actually pulling people out of the deserts that the cartels have left behind for dead. We're actually stopping the trafficking of humans into this country, the trafficking of dangerous drugs like fentanyl into this country. Last week, my guys had a stop, or a week and a half ago, a stop where we found 80 pounds of fentanyl in the back of somebody's car. Those are 360,000 pills. Steve, imagine how many lives we saved with that. Not to mention there was 9 pounds of cocaine in the trunk. This is experience you gain only through doing the job. And I think right now we have got some issues in America, budgets, economy, and I know we're going to talk about a lot of this tonight, but you've got to have somebody that has experience dealing with these issues. That's what this Senate race is about. This is one of the most important jobs in our state and in this country. We've got to send the right person back.
So some people are calling this a border crisis. So I want to ask you about solutions to that. Some people talked about, is there a patchwork? Do you do a little bit of this here, a little bit of this there? Do you put border security and immigration in the same category, or would they have different lanes for you?
Well, they cross over, Steve. That's a great question. Well, border security and immigration cross over. These are two issues separate. Immigration, we got to do a better job in Senate and Congress to come up with some comprehensive, common sense immigration solutions. This is what their responsibility is. But we also, under the last 3.5 years, we've seen a real debacle at the border. I've been a sheriff under President Trump. I've seen the successes that his policies had, and I saw the complete opposite of the Biden administration under Mayorkas and some of these other folks. They have opened the border, and it has caused real problems in this country. It has created national security issues, risks. That's the border security piece of it. We've got an invasion of people, which, by the way, if you don't know the definition of an invasion, it is an incursion of a large group of people into a sphere or place of activity, or an unwanted intrusion into somebody's domain. Both of those qualify. It's changed a lot, Steve, over the last couple decades. What we're seeing now are people coming from all over the world. We've got 140,000 Chinese nationals, mostly military-age men, in the last 3.5 years under this administration, not to mention the fentanyl crisis.
Do you think this is a lack of President Biden doing a good job? Do you think Secretary Mayorkas has done a poor job? Or do you think this has been part of some plan, that this was a plan they were trying to put together for border security or immigration, and they've just failed at it?
You know, as a sheriff for 8 years dealing with this, especially under the Trump administration versus the Biden administration, initially I thought, well, maybe this is just incompetence. Maybe they just don't know. Maybe they're not up to speed. It didn't take long to realize that a lot of these decisions, these executive orders, the reversal of orders that were working, folks, these were intentional. They have intentionally opened the southern border. And even though as sheriffs, we continue to tell them the problems with this, they continue to move in the same direction of allowing people coming in that are national security threats. Look, over the last 6 months, we had Laken Riley killed in Georgia by somebody that was into this country illegally. We had Rachel Morin, a mother in Maryland, killed by somebody that came into this country illegally. We have Jocelyn Nurgaya, I'm probably not saying her name right, but she was a 12-year-old girl, raped, killed by people in this country illegally. Just a couple days ago, right here in the Tucson sector in Arizona, our Border Patrol apprehended 7 people that were convicted of sex crimes in our country, sent back. They now have come back. Some of them were rape, sexual abuse, and some of them were sexual misconduct with minors. This is the type of stuff we're dealing with every day, and we owe it to the American people to secure our borders and protect American families, which is why it is so important that we send the proven conservative leader and fighter that understands it, like myself, back to Washington, D.C.
Initially, you said you thought it might be incompetence, and then you think it's purposeful.
There's some incompetence there, too.
Okay, all right,
There's some incompetence
but what
there,
would be
too.
the motivation there for it being purposeful?
Well, there's a lot. I think globalism is afoot. I think there's a real push for globalism. I also think that you now are seeing the movement towards allowing people to vote that are not citizens of this country. You are also undermining the rule of law. The strength of America, Steve, and everybody out there, I think most people know, and the Founding Fathers knew it when they said, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice. And so if you're going to undermine America and change it, which, by the way, Joe Biden's slogan when he ran was, we're going to reinvent America. What better way to do that than to undermine the rule of law? Over the last 3.5 years, I went back to the White House as a sheriff from Little Pinal County. I went back 10 times. Not one time has President Biden met with any of the sheriffs in this country. It shows a total disregard for the rule of law, and their policies show a total disregard for the rule of law. And furthermore, there's another candidate, Ruben Gallego, that is running on the Democrat side, that has basically rubber-stamped a lot of these same policies that have failed the American people, especially as it relates to the border.
There are a lot of Arizonans watching tonight who believe in pragmatism, bipartisanship or nonpartisanship, and when it comes to immigration, border security, a lot of people have talked about that. Outgoing Senator Sinema had tried to form some kind of compromise there as well. Do you see any hope? Would you, if you were in the Senate, try to work across the aisle on something like this? Not to give up your conservative principles, but just to find solutions.
Steve, look, I represent Republicans, Democrats, and independents right now as the elected sheriff, twice elected sheriff of Pinal County. I understand that these issues transcend party politics. We have a lot of independents and a growing number in this state because they're tired of party politics. We've got Republicans that are tired of Democrats, but I think everybody can agree we don't want crime in our communities. We don't want national security threats, and we don't want the fentanyl poisoning and the other drugs that are coming in through these open borders. The leading cause of death in America right now, Steve, between the ages of 18 and 45 is fentanyl poisoning. Now they're also putting things like xylazine in that. We have American families, mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, brothers and sisters who have lost loved ones to fentanyl poisoning, and a government that continues to not do anything about it. Now, I can tell you that because I'm on there, I'm fighting it every day, and I see and talk to other Border Patrol agents and other federal officials that tell me that this administration continues to tell them to stand down. We need somebody in Washington, D.C. that's going to burn, I hope to get on the Judiciary Committee. I hope to get on the Homeland Security Committee. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to raise hell. I'm going to raise hell until we get this border secured, because that's what we owe to the American people, and we certainly owe it to the people of Arizona.
Let's move on to another huge topic, and that is abortion. When the Dobbs ruling came down about 2 years ago this week, there was discussion about now abortion goes to the states. If you were in the Senate, would you want there to be some sort of federal policy related to abortion? Do you think the states should stick with it? And if you were to go for a federal policy, what would that policy look like?
Well, first of all, I'm pro-life. I think life starts at conception. And I think that the Dobbs decision was the right decision to put it back into the hands of the states. Steve, I've spent nearly, and for everybody out there, I've spent nearly 2 decades of my life in law enforcement, fighting to protect the lives of men, the lives of women, their health, the lives of teenagers and children, and the unborn. Ronald Reagan has a great quote. He says, "I can't help but notice that those who are for abortion have already been born." And that's the truth. Who will be the champion for the unborn? So I will always fight for life. I don't think it is the extremist view to want to protect life. I think the real extreme view is thinking that you can take the life of an unborn child all the way up until the day of birth. I want to touch real quick on a ballot measure that's probably going to be hitting our ballot, which I hope everybody listening to me tonight will do everything you can to stop this. because that ballot measure would give the ability to have abortions all the way up. And I think this is too much. I've talked to a lot of Republicans, Democrats, and independents. It goes too far for everybody. It will allow for you to abort a baby all the way up until the day of birth. Not to mention, and more towards the law enforcement piece, it would allow traffickers, sex traffickers, to take their victims to a abortion clinic and have an abortion without notifying law enforcement. Even worse, it would allow somebody who would violate a child, or a coach, or a family member, or a mentor, who would violate a child. They can take them to the clinic, and there's no ability or responsibility for the clinic to notify law enforcement or the parents. That goes too far. It goes too far for everybody. But I think it's important that people know that I'm pro-life, and I'll do what I can to support life and protect life, because that's what our Declaration of Independence says, and that's what I believe.
But Mr. Lamb, since you're concerned about this measure, which will very likely be on the ballot in November, could pass, does that make you think about supporting a federal policy that would be universal, as Roe v. Wade had?
Look, I'll continue to say, Steve, and we always do these what-if questions. You guys in the media,
course.
You love to do these what-if and get the answers you want. The reality is the right decision was already made at a federal level. I don't look to the federal government to set my moral compass, Steve, nor should any of you. The federal government shouldn't set anybody's moral compass. We have a responsibility to protect life. I do that in law enforcement. I will do that as an elected official. This is an issue, Steve, we're not going to agree on as voters, as Arizonans or Americans. We're going to be all over the place. But please, everybody listening to me tonight, there are the Democrat Party, they don't want you to focus on the failures of all of the other policies they've had over the last 3.5 years. They want you to lock into an emotional issue. They're playing on your emotions and want you to become a single issue voter. We have issues that are affecting not just a portion of Americans. We have issues that are affecting all Americans. That is the border, fentanyl, the economy, gas prices, grocery prices, housing prices, homelessness. We've got crime on the rise. Please, I beg of you, whether we agree or don't agree on this issue, please understand that you cannot, I hope that you would not be a single issue voter and play into that, because we have a lot of other issues, especially where they have failed. And this is Joe Biden, this is Ruben Gallego, and so many other people in Washington, D.C., even on the Republican side, that have failed you, the American people. We need to make sure that we're voting on all the issues. Please, I ask you that of you.
You mentioned the cost of groceries and et cetera. Obviously, inflation has affected the United States hard for the last couple of years, coming down a little bit, cooling off a bit with action by the Fed. But what would you want to do in the Senate to assure more affordability for your constituents?
Well, I think you're giving them credit saying they're cooling off, Steve. I don't know that they're cooling off. Let me give you the numbers. It was 1.8% in 2019. It was 1.2%. It was going down in Trump's last year. Then we jumped up to 4.7. Then we went to 8. So if you talk cooling going from 8 to 4, it went to 4.1.
If it comes down at all from 8, it's cooling,
and now,
I guess, right?
But it's still too high. They've moved to the Overton window on us, folks. They've got us thinking that 3% or 4% is an acceptable number. The reality is, over the last 3.5 years, the cumulative inflation rate, Steve, is at over 20, or right around 20%. The cost of groceries is up over 20%. The cost of rent over 20%. Your utilities are up almost 30%. This isn't working for Arizonans. It's not working for Americans. Bidenomics is failing, and we can't continue to go down this road. How do we solve it? Because I think you have to have solutions, Steve. What we need, folks, is we've got to get our energy independence back. Plain and simple. You know, Joe Biden has looked to solve the gas price problem everywhere but the U.S. We need to go right here in our own country and solve this issue. It takes energy to make a product, ship a product, and sell a product. If you want to get your economy back under control, you have to get your energy independence under control, because either we're going to absorb that in the way of higher goods, costs for the goods, and whatever doesn't get absorbed there will be passed on to us in inflation. And it's unsustainable, the direction we're going, and we need to make change now.
Do you support any aspect of alternative energy to go along with traditional fossil fuels?
Well, sure. I think, we should look for all sorts of energy sources. I think we should be looking into the innovative technological advances, but we should do it on a market-based approach, you know, where we look at ways, encouraging people to find solutions to energy problems. But the clean energy, nuclear. We should be doing more nuclear. We've got these micro nuclear reactors we should be putting. We should encourage, that's the cleanest energy we got. We can't go away from coal. That's the second best. If you took it like a pyramid, we'd be at nuclear, we'd be at coal, we'd be at fracking, which is, we need that clean energy. And then you've got solar, you've got wind. There's all sorts of pieces of energy, which I'm for, but I think we cannot look for things that are going to affect, we also have to maintain an economy. And what we're doing right now, for the sake of an environment that we're already cleaning up, we have people that are willing to throw our economy down the drain. And we need well-tempered people that understand that you can achieve having a good environment and you can also have a good economy without affecting our daily lives.
Mr. Lamb, you've made a point of talking about your long law enforcement experience, so I've got to ask you, was the 2020 election or the 2022 election in either Arizona or the U.S. stolen?
You guys love to live in this place too.
Well, your opponent lives in that place
too. I don't understand why
too.
the media loves to do this. Look, there's fraud in every election. And I'm here to tell you folks, anybody who tells you that I don't think there's fraud in an election, they're lying. They're just lying, and you should question what they're telling you at that point. There is fraud in every election. I live in a world, Steve, where I don't get to think about thoughts and feelings. I'm a law enforcement guy. I have to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. I went out looking. I worked with other sheriffs all across this country. We worked with our county recorder. We put cameras on all of our ballot boxes in Pinal County because that's what I'm responsible for. We put cameras on our ballot boxes. Not only did we monitor those from our sheriff's office, we opened it up for our public to be able to come in and monitor at our sheriff's office 24/7 for the 3 weeks leading up to the election day. And we had a lot of success there. Did we still have issues? Yeah. We got to do a lot better on a national, state level to ensure election integrity and security. We owe it to the American people. The media continuing to want to harp on 2020, 2022, that's not helping. What we need to do is we need to secure the elections as much as possible right now. And the other thing is we can't continue with this election interference. We've got a president that is using lawfare and the federal government to hold another presidential candidate, President Trump, in court to where he can't get out. Come on, this is election interference at its best, and we've got to do better than that. And we expect better of our elected officials. I certainly, as a rule of law guy, expect better.
I'm going to push back at you just a little. Big surprise.
Push back.
It's not just the media. It's your opponent in this race. Also President Trump, former President Trump, has made a lot of hay of this, of saying he should still be in office. After all these court rulings, you're a guy who's an evidence-based person. You're looking for it. You haven't seen it. So let me segue into this. Do you have a line in the sand when it comes to former President Trump as far as where your support would go, or are you all in?
Well, I think, Steve, that's a really general question to ask.
Sure.
I mean, you're asking me to say, look, I support his policies. I think there's a lot of people out there that support his policies. I've always been a supporter of President Trump. And I think that we need that back. We need not only that strength, because look at us on a national security level. We're so weak right now. We never had wars. Ever since Biden came in, one of the first things he did was he went to Afghanistan and withdrew and left all that equipment there. That was the first bungling of national security he really had, other than opening the southern border. And after that, we had Ukraine invade Russia. We've got the Middle East issue. We've got China circling over Taiwan. We need that strength back. We need good economical, conservative policies back. We need good border policies back. And I can support all of those. In the end, I'm Mark Lamb. I've always been my own man. I think that's one of the benefits I bring to this is Washington is full of people that want to just get in line. We need proven conservative leaders and fighters that have the courage to stand up and say, nope, we're going to do what's right for the American people, and it has to be what's right for God, family, freedom, and the Constitution. We owe it to the American people. That's how I've done it as a sheriff over the last 8 years. And the people listening tonight, if you'll vote for me on July 30th and then in November, you're going to have that commitment that I'm going to stand courageously for what is right and do what is right. Because I'm my own man and I represent the state of Arizona.
Mr. Lamb, about a minute left for a big question. How much support, if you were in the Senate, would you give to, respectively, Israel and Ukraine?
I don't think we should be sending any money to Ukraine. Look, I think initially we should have never have sent it. We should have sent maybe some support in the way that would have helped them. But there's so much, they don't know where that money went. We need to support Israel. They're our friends. And I think the way we support them is not necessarily through cash. I've always said that. I think we're broke. We're $34.6 trillion in debt. We don't have money to be sending a lot of people. What we should be doing is we should be focused on how can we give them the weapons and whatever they need to be able to defeat Hamas. These terrorists will be a problem for us. They have been in the past. You've got Al-Qaeda that's on the rise again. You've got ISIS. You've got the Taliban. All of them are on the rise again. We need to support our friends who are battling those terrorists.
About 20 seconds on this one. Who do you see as the U.S. prime adversary right now?
You know, I ask this question all the time. You know what answer I get? Joe Biden. That's the answer I usually get. Okay. But I think our prime adversary right now is probably China. Why? Because they're putting fentanyl in the hands of the cartels, and they're giving it to our loved ones. It's the leading cause of death. Appreciate
the conversation. It's now time for your closing statement, Mr. Lamb. You've got 1 minute.
You know, a while back, I was asked by Oliver North on a podcast. He said, Sheriff, what do you want your grandkids to remember you for? And I, without hesitation, I said, I hope that they will remember me as a patriot who fought valiantly for God, family, freedom, and the Constitution. That's what I want to be remembered for. And I hope if you elect me, you view me as a patriot who will fight valiantly for you, for those principles, for God, family, freedom, and the Constitution. We need a proven conservative leader and fighter in Washington, D.C. We need somebody that will bring a conservative view into all of the issues that we're dealing with, and we need to take this country back and this state back. I would love to be your representative for the Republican Party on July 30th, and for all you independents, please come request a Republican ballot. You can vote too. I need your vote. We need your vote. Sheriff Mark Lamb, Mark Lamb for Senate on July 30th. I would love your vote.
And that's all the time we have for our one-on-one conversation with Mark Lamb, Republican candidate for U.S. Senate. Again, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Steve.
As a reminder, the Arizona primary election is on July 30th. Early voting starts July 3rd. All registered voters can participate in the primary, including independents. There are a lot of offices up for election this year, so we'll keep hosting debates through the November general election. Head to azmedia.org to see a list of every local media partner, plus upcoming debates and where you can find them on TV, radio, and digital platforms. You can also see the full debate schedule, learn more about clean elections, and submit questions for future debates by heading to azcleanelections.gov. On behalf of our partners at Clean Elections, the Arizona Media Association, Reister, and Bitfire Studios, thanks for watching.